Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be doing a code walkthrough of www.jamesperalta.com, which is this website that I built. And I'm going to be walking, this is my portfolio website where you can see home video, or you can see a home page. You can see Peralta 75 list, some videos, some mocks. Login works correctly too. So yeah, there's a authentication feature, and yeah, I want to do a code walkthrough and highlight some technologies and talk about some of the technology choices that I made. So what I want to walk through is Next.js, which is the framework I use to build the front end. I want to walk through Vercel, which I use to host the Next.js app, and I want to talk about Tailwind CSS, which is how I styled this whole library or this whole page. And then I also want to talk a little bit about Cursor and how you can leverage Cursor in order to build yourself a portfolio website like this relatively quickly. So, yeah. So, what I used Next.js, and the main thing that I wanted to just talk about with Next.js is why I decided to use Next.js over something like React is just because I wanted to play around with server side rendering. So right now there's two common ways to build your apps. There's single page applications where you send the whole JavaScript code to the front end, and then the front end never redirects or anything. It just renders as you interact with the page. So as you pretend you would click onto here, instead of requesting the Peralta 75 HTML, what it would do is it intercepts that and it will render what the Peralta 75 HTML, all generated using JavaScript. So that's the single page application. That was a lot more common when I started in 2015. So probably in the last decade, single page applications were common. And you're starting to see a lot of people go to server side rendering. And honestly, server side rendering came first back when the internet first started, the early 2000s. PHP and things like that were server side rendered, where yeah, pretty much whenever you requested, back then JavaScript wasn't used as much, and also devices weren't as strong. So running a ton of JavaScript on the client would probably have been really slow. So yeah, a lot of websites back in the days in the early 2000s were actually server side rendered. So you would request a web page, and it would return you the HTML, and there was very minimal JavaScript. JavaScript started happening a lot later than that, probably mid in the 2010s. You see all these JavaScript front end libraries start exploding, and now, yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of them, but honestly, it started to slow down. So, yeah, so that was a little rant on service or the difference between server side rendering and React. Or, I mean, Next.js is built on React, or it's pretty much exactly like React, but it just adds all the things on top that allows it to server side render. Let me make sure I covered everything that I want to cover regarding server side rendering in Next.js. I was building up a script over on this side. Okay, let me talk about why some of the key advantages of using server side rendering. And a lot of this is why I decided to choose it. The main thing for me that I was thinking is for search engine optimization. My website is a portfolio website. My website will contain a lot of content that I want to get picked up by the search engine so that it could be recommended in things like Google and Bing and all these other search engines. I want people to be able to search Peralta 75, and then it will just show up in the search engine, or even little text in here. I'm going to have a lot more content. So, yeah, I wanted to be search engine like SEO friendly, and server side rendered is the reason why it's more search engine friendly is because something like a single page application, it generates all of the content dynamically. So it's not easy for a crawler to just go in and crawl and because if you ever use the crawler, you would know how annoying it is to work with a dynamic website like a single page application. It pretty much loads you in one page, and then you have to click around to discover the content, and then there might be weird animations. You have to wait a few seconds for it to render because the JavaScript might be slow, all that stuff. But pretty much with a server side rendered, when you request the web page and you get it back, the page that you get back is pretty much the content is there. It's more static content because it was generated on the back end, right? That's my main thing. I wanted it to be search engine optimized. What else? There's like faster first load and stuff like that, especially for slow devices. But honestly, I don't really mind that because most of the people that watch me live in the U.S. But although I want to be inclusive and I want to be accessible, that's also one thing that's important. You want your content to be reached by anyone, but I mean, devices are just super strong these days. What else? Simple security. One thing that's good about server side rendering too is that you can hide all of your keys and all your API calls away from the client. So when you have to build single page applications, if someone looks at your network tab, they can see all the API calls that you're making. And for better or for worse, they can, like, if you don't have a secured API, they can easily just hijack your API calls and start making those calls themselves. They can fake the headers and stuff like that. I know my brother building on johnperalta.com was talking about like that people could just straight up see his API calls, and I ran into that issue before. So one of the best ways to avoid that is to hide everything like server side render, because when they request the web page, and they just make a request to your server for the web page. For example, they'll just make an HTTP call for like Peralta 75, right? When they hit the Peralta 75 list, all they're gonna get back is the HTML. But when they make that call for this HTML, on my server, I'm gonna make my API calls. So now my API calls are hidden from the client, from the person requesting them. They can't see it in their network tab. So all they literally get back is my web page. They can never like inspect and be creepy. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I like about server side rendering as well. Like simpler security from my perspective, because we don't have to pass a ton of things to the client. We don't have to pass in all the API keys, I mean, you would never pass the API keys, but the client doesn't even need to know that much about the APIs in general. That's what it's like. You never pass the API key into the front end. Let me make that clear. I don't know if I said that earlier, but let me make that clear for in case anyone don't pass the API keys, because JavaScript, you can inspect the element and see all the JavaScript. What is this? Where's source? In a single page application, you could this is all the JavaScript code right there. You can see the CSS, everything. If you put your API keys, somebody could just look at the source and grab your API key, jack your API key, and run up your bill. Yeah. Cool. That was a little bit about server side rendering. Let's talk about how I used Tailwind CSS. I think that's another important part, because pretty much there's two common ways to build out your, well, let's just say there's three common ways to build out your CSS right now. So the first is using a component library. That's really popular. Something like Material UI was really popular. Then the one I used is Tailwind CSS, which is a utility-based framework. And then you could also just straight raw use CSS. component library is something like Material UI right here. And these kind of just gives you, this is way more beginner friendly. If I'm just starting off with front end for the first time and I don't want to manage CSS, what I would do is use a component library like Material UI that offers you all of these beautiful components like autocomplete, buttons, button groups, checkboxes, select, sliders, and they already behind this. You just pick from these components. Look how literally 5 lines of code, and in the background they style it, they make it dynamic, they do all these things, they follow proper design principles. So you can see what the advantages of using Material UI is you're able to ship faster. It follows material design, which is a principle for how to design beautiful web pages. So it's like a guideline. So you could talk about the Material Design 2 guidelines. I mean, it talks about theming, spacing, icons, what a beautiful typography looks like. They did a bunch of studies. So all of this stuff is encoded into the component library. So it was very useful. Like if you're a beginner, just straight up use Material UI or some sort of component library because it's very, very beneficial for you. It allows you to move a lot faster. And if you don't have that much design chops, you're not used to building design or designing software, designing interfaces, people have done the research for you and they expose the component library for you. And then if you go work at a large company or even some of these later stage startups, a lot of them will have component libraries that they built in house. Maybe they designed it completely in house. I've seen that a lot of times where they'll build out what a button is and they'll have a front end developer build out the whole component library, and they'll have different buttons, but we'll have the design standards and design principles from the founders or from the company. It's specific to the company, and companies like to do that because they like control. They want to have full control over like the CSS, the styling. They don't want to have to like push a PR against Material UI. I don't know if Material UI is open source, just in order to get it to behave a way that they want to or fork it. So it's not that hard to actually build a component library all from scratch, especially if it's a small subset. This Material UI is a large component library that offers a lot of different things, so it's a lot harder, but companies only really need a subset of these. Yeah, so that's a little bit about Material UI. I didn't use Material UI. You'll see that I use Tailwind CSS. And Tailwind CSS is, let me look this up right here, is a utility first CSS framework. So what does that mean is you don't get components out of the box. You have to build all of the components yourself. What does that mean is if I want to design a container, I don't just get a container that automatically sizes. I have to build a div, and then I have to use Tailwind CSS in order to style that div. So you can see right here is all it essentially does is it gives you a bunch of CSS classes that automatically injects styles into, like instead of you defining all the CSS from scratch, it gives you classes that have a ton of CSS styles for you. So honestly, it's a lot like Bootstrap, but if you're familiar with Bootstrap, where you pretty much just go in and you just start defining class names, and that starts helping, and then that starts formatting your or applying styles to your web page. So you could see, let's go on the videos page. Or video section. You can see that I don't have CSS anywhere. I just use Tailwind CSS, and it makes the HTML a lot more complicated and ugly, honestly. But the one thing that it really helped, that's really good with having all the CSS right here and not using a component library or a CSS file or an external CSS file is actually for AI. I noticed AI or Tailwind CSS is really good for AI, and that if you ask AI to generate you code, a lot of times it's going to be generating in Tailwind CSS. And yeah, I think Tailwind CSS is really AI friendly, and in the world, in the world where we'll be building a lot of things with AI, it's important to have your code AI friendly. And the reason why I'm saying it's AI friendly is because it defines everything up front. You can see all my styles are literally in the code with the HTML. So anyone working with AI knows that context is king. That's why cursor is beginning to just go crazy. That's why they're increasing the context length of all the models. Context is king. You want to the more context that you have, or the better context that you have, the better the AI output will be. So why is this such good context to the AI? Well, it knows exactly what the HTML is. It knows exactly what CSS is being applied to your HTML, so it can kind of visualize the styling, and it's all right there. It doesn't have to look into other files and then do some inference to figure out, okay, this is the class name. Where is that class name, or where's the CSS stored, and then sort of join the two. Could even get that wrong. Kind of has all the context right there. That's why I've honestly found it really good to just build these AI apps, or when I'm vibe coding or building these websites using AI, to just use Tailwind CSS, because it's everything is right here. All the context is right there for the AI, and it could easily understand and give better outputs. That's what I noticed. Because even like pretend it was using a component library like Material UI, right? That's a whole different library. How like it might know the props and stuff and how it works behind the scenes, but it could go outdated. People are pushing to that all the time. There's changes and stuff. Sorry, my alarm's going off. Yeah, I mean, I think I was just ranting about Tailwind CSS, but the main thing is it's AI friendly. It's very, honestly, very easy to use. You could see that my website right here is very dynamic as well. Like, boom. It's not an ugly UI too. Videos have a nice nav bar, right? And it's also dynamic, as in, let me hop into a iPhone 12 Pro. You can see that it turns into a hamburger. It supports even small, like, mobile phones. And you can go videos and you can see, right? So it is dynamic as well, and that's all using Tailwind CSS. And obviously I vibe coded that too. I didn't want to just keep going, like, look how much CSS that would take to style that. Might as well just vibe code it. So what else? What else did I want to cover? I want to cover Vercel. So Vercel is what I. What the heck? One sec. Thought I had the. Okay. Let me just make sure that I'm not on. Let me do Vercel docs. So Vercel is actually what I use to host my website. So it's a pretty easy it's basically my infrastructure. It's pretty easy to use. All you have to do is connect it to your GitHub, and then it starts watching the main branch and all of your other branches. So it'll deploy your main branch to a URL of your choice. You could buy one off Vercel too. And pretty much it'll watch your main branches. As you make changes to the main branch, it'll automatically deploy your website. And then another good thing is if you create branches because you want to test out a feature, it'll create preview preview URLs in order for you to test that change before putting that change to your main branch and all your users seeing it. So that's really easy way to test stuff in kind of like a semi-production environment. Yeah, Vercel is the infrastructure I use. I've deployed apps on raw AWS before, and it's still good. It's still fun, but with this website or with Vercel, I don't have to worry about anything under the hood. It kind of provides everything that I need to. It does everything out of the box for me. So, for example, it deploys all of my APIs for me. I just have to create an API folder, and then I just have to create, like, these are the different API routes, like video route, YouTube, and I just have to define the API function. So I just say this is a GET request. I parse specific things from the URL right here, and then I make a call to, like, my backend, or I make a call to Google APIs from here. This is kind of what this is doing. So instead of figuring out where I'm gonna be hosting my API, how I'm gonna, like, we're basically, I don't have to worry about the compute aspect of my whole portfolio. All I have to do is literally write my APIs, write this API folder, write mock, write, like, it essentially figures out the API path using your routes here, your folder structure. So automatically Vercel would pick these up and deploy it. And you could actually see in my app here, when I'm collecting videos, you can see that it's making the API calls, right, to videos right there. And yeah, as I keep rendering more page, right, there's pagination happening here. It's rendering more and more videos, and it's making an API call to this videos, and all I had to do was write a videos and the GET request here. You can see in 35 lines of code, and don't even need to worry about anything on the infrastructure, how to deploy this. Am I going to use AWS Lambda? Am I going to use EC2? Am I going to use ECS? Anything like that. I didn't even have to worry about it. I just straight up have to worry about the business logic. So that's what I like about Vercel. You just hook into your website. It deploys all your APIs for you. It handles what I mentioned of actually, like, just automatically deploying whenever main is updated, like deploying your code whenever main is updated, automatically building, like, preview environments. I think that's the main thing that I like about Vercel. And there's tons of other features. You can hook it up into databases and stuff, and I'm gonna use full stack Vercel. I'm gonna use everything, like even my database and stuff. I'm not even gonna think about AWS for this project. I have a different project where I can show one where I did the whole thing with AWS stack, but yeah, right now I'm literally just using. So yeah, there's API, easily builds and deploys your code. So yeah, right now all my code is actually in TypeScript as well. So it runs a TypeScript build to convert the TypeScript to JavaScript, and then it deploys that. It handles all that. It has a CDN, so it caches a lot of the stuff and makes it load faster for people. It's what else? Yeah, obviously the compute portion. I can run cron jobs and stuff easily too here. I think I just have to make a cron folder. So yeah, this is pretty much it. I haven't looked at the pricing exactly, because I don't care. I literally don't care. We'll see. We'll see if I'll be laughing about that at some point. Nobody hack my site, please. But I'm pretty sure, like, the one thing about these fully managed ones is that you could easily add rate limiting and stuff. Yeah, add firewalls, bot management, all out of the box. So should be good. I mean, Yeah, that's kind of my tech stack, literally. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about? Well, I built all of this thing using Cursor, pretty much vibe coded it. Vibe coding it allowed me to build it a lot faster than I would have by myself. Honestly, this website would have took me probably a month or so, given the amount of time that I had to work on it and motivation after working the long job. It would take me probably more than a month, I would say, to build out this website. Maybe 2 months. Like maybe I wouldn't even have done it because I was too lazy. But with the power of Cursor, I was able to build it probably within less than a week. And yeah, you could see a lot of it. You could see all the different chats that I'm having with it. You could see that I'm talking about Tailwind CSS, trying to understand all of, you can see all my chats, trying to figure out the navigation. And the nice thing about Cursor, it's a really fun software to use, or it's text editor or whatever, IDE to use, because before Cursor, I was using ChatGPT to help me build stuff, and before ChatGPT, I was straight building stuff by using documentation. So I've been there where I had to just straight up use documentation. I've been there when ChatGPT first came out, and I was pretty much copy and pasting a ton of stuff into ChatGPT, getting results. And then to provide context, I would have to keep copy and pasting all my context into ChatGPT. But now all of the context is right here, fully integrated. You can just talk to the AI right here. It understands your code. It's reading your code. It's actually inputting the code right inside of your text editor, so it's really nice. And like I said earlier, context is king. So it has full context, and you don't have to tediously move, copy and paste things into your chat GPT just to get like good responses. It has it all right there. And they also build embeddings on your code. That's a little bit more technical concept, more deep concept, but what it essentially does is it parses your code and it builds embeddings. And the embeddings it essentially helps you. It's just a better way to inject context into your prompts, right? So it generates embeddings, and it actually uses those embeddings when you're actually asking questions here. And embeddings essentially just helps you. It does semantic search and helps find what's relevant based on your prompt. So yeah, I love Cursor. It's a fork of VS Code, so it has all the same beautiful things that you would use with VS Code, but just adds the AI stuff with it. It's very similar to VS Code. So if you've been using VS Code for a long time, Cursor will be an easy switch. You get the AI right out the box. You got the AI on the side. Yeah, that's sort of my tech stack. That's how I was able to build this. We do login. We do TypeScript. Use Node Package Manager. Playwright for unit testing. React testing library or Playwright for my end-to-end testing. React testing library for my sort of unit test and component test. Yeah, that's pretty much about it. I don't know if the React code is that interesting. I want to talk about the high level infrastructure or the high level setup. And if you want to do a code walkthrough, I can do a full code deep dive of maybe think of how I handle auth, how I hide certain screens, because certain screens are only accessible if you're authenticated. I can show that if you want. I can show her how contacts and providers work. I can show how the routing works in Next.js, how it works, how it's way different than React, or if you were to use React and have to use something like React Router, the difference between those. There's a lot of concepts that I could get into and that we could do a deep dive in. If you want to learn all about those, just let me know. I want to build things that people here want to know and want to sort of learn. So yeah, that's a lot about my website. Shout out to johnperalta.com, by the way. johnperalta.com is the website my brother's working. I was motivated to build or to make a video like this because he just did a video, or he's been doing a lot of videos showing off his tech stack, and how he built this. His tech stack is completely different. He's using, I think, React as well, but I think he's using more just raw CSS. I don't know how he's building the CSS. I haven't looked at the code, but he's building everything on GCP as well. That's sort of his tech stack. His website is more for AI, equity research. So shout out to johnperalta.com, building a beautiful website. He's also very new to coding, and he's building out this whole thing by himself and learning how to deploy it, how to build a front end, how to build a back end, a Google Cloud platform, how to build AI agents. All this stuff he's learning by doing, and it's just really motivating to watch him go through that journey. And yeah, it motivated me to make this video on jamesperalta.com as well. Go check out johnperalta.com. Go check out jamesperalta.com. Peralta Takeover continues in 2025, and I'll see you in the next video.